Did hip-hop pioneer the Kidd Creole receive justice or injustice? In the spring of 2022, bona fide architect of hip-hop culture, the Kidd Creole, aka Nathaniel Glover, was convicted of manslaughter by a jury in Manhattan Criminal Court and sentenced to serve 16 years at a maximum security facility. Why are people now questioning whether or not he truly received justice, or in reality, is the victim of a grave injustice in this case? The Kidd Creole began his professional career as a rap artist in 1976. He is an original member of Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee, and having traveled the world spreading the culture, is a celebrated founding father of hip-hop. He created the phrase, "Yes, yes, y'all," which has been a staple for MCs for decades. In spite of all of historical contributions to the culture, in recent years, Kidd Creole found himself in a position where he had to work a temp night job in between shows and royalty checks to make ends meet. Off and on for years, he worked the midnight to 8 a.m. shift whenever he felt the need to, as a copy specialist, running off big print jobs for major companies in New York City. One particular evening in early August 2017, just before midnight, Kidd Creole was on his way to work, minding his own business, when he passed an individual who was posted on the wall consuming an alcoholic beverage. This surveillance footage clearly shows what actually transpired next. The man who confronted Kidd Creole had over a dozen arrests, with numerous charges for violent felonies, a conviction for rape and kidnapping for which he had served a prison sentence and was currently a registered sex offender. Of course, all of this was unknown to Kidd Creole at the time, yet he could sense from the man's energy that something was not quite right with him. This man confronted Kidd Creole, who was wearing earphones at the time and initially couldn't hear the man. He stopped and removed the earphones to hear what he had to say. Kidd Creole's initial impression at this point was that the man was hitting on him. He had no interest in such activity and was focused on getting to work, so he attempted to simply walk away. The man followed him and began speaking in a threatening manner. Kidd Creole once again stopped and stood his ground, exchanging words with the man, hoping that would be the end of it. At this point, his initial impression of the man attempting to hit on him quickly changed, and he felt threatened as the man's words and tone grew more aggressive towards him. Once again, Kidd Creole attempted to walk away. Once again, the man followed him. At this point, according to Kidd Creole, the man attempted to grab him, and he felt the need to defend himself Upon doing so, the man backed off of him and returned to his original position where he resumed drinking. Numerous pedestrians passed the man, and no one noticed or reacted to him as if he appeared to have suffered fatal wounds. After taking another swig of his drink, the man attempted to follow Kidd Creole's direction again, changed his mind, and suddenly turns to walk in the opposite direction. About an hour later, Kidd Creole's attacker was found 1 block away and now had an additional semicircular laceration on his temple that was not there when he initially encountered Kidd Creole. Exactly what happened to him in the interim remains a mystery, but it seems he suffered some further physical trauma after his exchange with Kidd Creole and now was in need of medical assistance. Paramedics were called to the scene, and the man became combative with them. He had to be restrained in order to be put in an ambulance. He arrived at the hospital alive and well, so much so, in fact, that he continued to fight with the medical staff who were attempting to treat him. At this point, a decision was made to administer a sedative known as midazolam, or more commonly known as Versed. The sedative clearly states that it is not to be mixed with alcohol because it could be fatal to do so. The man's blood alcohol content was twice the legal limit by multiple counts. He reeked of liquor. The sedative was administered to Kidd Creole's attacker anyway, and his heart rate immediately began to drop and drop until it ultimately goes to 0, and he expires. When the body was sent to the coroner for an official autopsy and the ruling on the cause of death, for some reason, the fact that the sedative had been administered was omitted. The coroner, therefore, did not run a toxicology test and ruled the cause of death to be the wounds the man suffered in his encounter with Kidd Creole. Kidd Creole was then arrested and charged with a single count of murder in the 2nd degree, for which he was detained without bail while awaiting trial for almost 5 years. His case ultimately became the oldest case in the Manhattan criminal court system to not have gone to trial, while Kidd Creole himself remained behind bars the entire time. In addition, Kidd Creole found that he now had to fight for his life in 2 courts, the court of law and the court of public opinion. A cherry-picked version of the facts were fed to the press, which highlighted Kidd Creole's initial impression of the man hitting on him, then glossing over the rest of the encounter until it gets to the physical altercation, creating a false narrative in the media that Kidd Creole attacked a quote-unquote homeless man in a fit of homophobic rage, which is 100% untrue. Had there been any truth to that narrative, why was Kidd Creole never charged with a hate crime? Could it be because it is apparent that the lack of truth in this version of the facts would have never stood up in court? Furthermore, Kidd Creole's attacker was widely reported to have been a homeless man. The truth, according to the man's own family, is that he was living in a shelter at the time and not on the streets, and was in the process of trying to get his own place. It would have been more accurate to describe the man as a registered sex offender, but doing so would have made Kidd Creole's defensive action seem like more of a reasonable response. Describing the attacker as homeless tarnishes Kidd Creole's image more, falsely depicting him as a callous killer of the less fortunate. After an article ran in the Source magazine where Kidd Creole finally spoke publicly, telling his side of the story for the first time, a trial date was set for the spring of 2022. Due to the public attention from the Source article, Kidd Creole was able to obtain a private attorney who was committed to fighting for justice on behalf of his client and agreed to take the case pro bono. In the trial, Kidd Creole's attorney attempted to call numerous witnesses who would have given important context about what actually transpired on the night in question, yet was repeatedly denied his request to call those witnesses. In spite of that, when all was said and done, the jury actually came back with a not guilty verdict and acquitted Kidd Creole of the single murder charge that had already robbed him of 5 years of his life. So why is Kidd Creole serving a 16-year sentence, one might ask? In an astonishing turn of events, once the trial was practically concluded and closing arguments for both sides had been rendered, the judge began her instructions to the jury on how they were to deliberate. It was at that exceedingly late stage of the proceedings that an additional single charge of manslaughter was added for the jury to consider. Kidd Creole's attorney had just argued a murder trial, not a manslaughter trial. Be that as it may, while the jury was deliberating, they requested to review the file that contained the detailed information about Kidd Creole's assertion of self-defense to factor in their decision. That request was flat out denied. With very little recourse and a very narrow, specific set of guidelines to follow to render a verdict, the jury came back with a full exoneration and acquittal on the single count of murder in the second degree, but rendered a guilty verdict on the single manslaughter charge. On this conviction, the judge sentenced Kidd Creole, aka Nathaniel Glover, to 16 years at a maximum security facility where he is currently serving his sentence. Looking at the video of what transpired on the night in question, was this a case of murder? Was this a case of manslaughter? Or was this a case of self-defense? Search your own conscience and answer for yourself.
Hey, what's up, y'all? I'm Chuck D, Public Enemy. Hip-hop community, this is a call to action for the culture. If they could do this to one of us and we say nothing, what's to stop them from doing this to any of us? Who will be next? You? Me? Let your voices be heard. Raise awareness. Amplify the message. If you do an injustice to one of us, you do an injustice to all of us. It will not go unanswered. Spread the word. Fight the power. Bring the noise. Free Kidd Creole.